Number 4. No other discipline concentrates as much on the concept of contextuality. The Socratic methods used in most law schools depend on the professor changing contextuality for the student and trains the student to decrease the time it takes to adjust to the new context. It serves as mental calisthenics and helps the students discover the process by which law and legal decisions are made. Change of context forces a change in perspective, a change in tactics, and perhaps changes in definitions. First-year law students will encounter intellectual challenges like this daily. The rule derived from one case is put in the different context of the facts from the next case, and as a result, either the rule must change or the interpretation of it must change. Philosophy courses will provide some practice in this kind of mental activity on the undergraduate level, but poetry courses engage it in even more often, laying special emphasis on the semantic, structural, and contextual problems involved. Sometimes the problem in interpreting poetry is as simple as considering a single line both in and out of the context of the poem as a whole. Take, for example, Keats's famous last lines of the Ode to a Grecian Urn. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all. Ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. Out of context, this statement seems demonstrably false. Anyone can think of beautiful things that are false. And the ugly truth has become an idiom, perhaps a cliché in the language. A careful exploration of the poem as a whole, however, sheds a different light on the closing lines, demonstrating how beauty has and is a kind of truth all its own. And that if there is any truth in the world, it resides in the response to beauty. At other times, a multiplicity of context arises from semantic and syntactic ambiguities, perceivable only upon several rereadings of the text. Take as an example this stanza from Blake's poem, London. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldiers sigh, runs in blood down palace walls. Students might perceive on first reading some of the horror of which Blake writes, but they need several rereadings to understand why these words prudence to the effects they do. Consider for the moment only the syntactic ambiguities. By the end of the first line, cry seems to be a verb, its subject being chimney sweepers. But by the end of the second line, cry seems instead to be a noun. The subject of the verb appalls. Taking cry as a noun is not a mistake made by the reader, but rather the recognition of an unavoidable ambiguity, whether intentional or not does not matter, created by the poet. The effect of the chimney sweepers crying has already become part of the reader's response by the time cry transforms itself from a verb into a noun. In somewhat similar ways, blackening church functions both as the subject and the object of appalls, and the sigh functions both as a verb and as a noun. Chimney sweepers and soldiers function both as plurals and possessives. In short, there is no way here of determining the parameters of a local context. The meanings multiply as the focus expands, and all the meanings function simultaneously. Often, this process is even more far-reaching. Contextuality can keep expanding throughout a whole work or beyond the work, the reader growing less and less able to deal consciously with the density of thought and feeling generated. Let us take another famous passage as an example. The final words of advice from Polonius to his son, Latrus, in the first act of Hamlet. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night, the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Legions of graduation speakers have offered this as parting advice to the graduates. Beautifully crafted lines of the highest mortality from the pen of our greatest writer. What could be better? Put them back into context of the speech as a whole, and their meaning takes a turn for the worse. At the end of all this self-protecting advice, to thine own self be true, sounds egocentric in the extreme. One could argue convincingly that Hitler was true to himself, yet was false to many another man. Expand the context once again. At first it seemed like the famous lines were golden. Put them back into the whole speech and they start to seem all self-serving. and Polonius appears a grasping, paranoid, meddling character. Now put this speech in the larger context of the character as a whole throughout the play. Polonius certainly does the meddling, the last bit of which leads to his death. He also seems most concerned with himself, making sure that the court is attentive to his every pronouncement and aware of the wisdom thereof. But, on the other hand, the old man is loved and respected by his children, Ophelia and Laertius, who are in many ways highly respectable characters in the play. Eventually, the student of poetry understands what the student of law will have to understand, that there is no separating substance from form or text from context. O chestnut tree, great-rooted blossomer, are you the leaf, the blossom, or the bole? O body swayed to music, O brightening glance! How can we know the dancer from the dance? This kind of training teaches students to be dissatisfied with any particular answer to a complex problem and warns them not to expect a final answer that will suffice to ward off all further questions. That is a necessary attitude with which to approach legal training. The study of poetry helps students learn how to analyze language, to recognize ambiguity, and to develop consistency in interpretation. Through it, students learn how to perceive with new eyes, not merely to see new things. The study of poetry and the study of law may at first seem strange, bedfellows, but they actually lie most comfortably together. To understand the law is to understand the possibilities of text, and that is precisely the province of the study of poetry. George D. Gopen.